Just earlier, Yuan Konye, who had entered the lamp cavern, was chased relentlessly by Zhang Yi. And so, 3 days passed. Yuan Konye was completely exhausted. During this time, he hadn't eaten a single meal or drunk a single drop of water. This sensation felt to him like being cut piece by piece by a blunt knife. At this moment, Yuan Konye desperately wished that Zhang Yixian was still alive because he was simply too tired. The physical and mental pressure was crushing him. As for Zhang Yi, seeing Yuan Konye's faltering steps made him grin from ear to ear. He knew that the day of his victory was not far away. Right now, Yuan Konye was utterly exhausted. Even the cold wind brushing against his face couldn't stop his drowsiness. All he wanted was to find a quiet place to sleep. But every time he tried to rest, Zhang Yi would immediately shoot at him, forcing him to stay awake. Over and over again, he warned himself not to fall asleep. The once unyielding aura was completely gone. His face now showed nothing but grievance, almost like a fragile young girl next door. To the point where, in the end, he started to pray, hoping for the gods to save him. But all that answered him was the biting cold wind. Thus, he began to question himself. Why can't I receive divine guidance? Did I really do something wrong? His mind was teetering on the edge of collapse. He muttered that everything he did was for the sake of evolution. Why, other than Zhang Yixian, does no one else understand him? At this moment, he no longer resembled the aloof, saintly leader of the snow worship sect. Suddenly, in his daze, he seemed to see his parents waving at him. Come here, son, come to us, let's go to heaven together. Stop clinging to this world. But in the next second, Zhang Yixian's image appeared before him. Wake up, the world still needs you to bring about evolution. You absolutely cannot fall here. Yet no matter how much Zhang Yixian pleaded, Yuan Konye acted as if he couldn't hear a thing, because he had long grown weary of being hunted. Now, all he wanted was to quietly nestle in Zhang Yixian's embrace. Maybe, in his heart, he believed that his past sins were unforgivable and that this situation was the best punishment for him. And so, in the real world, Yuan Konye clung to a withered tree and fell into a deep sleep. Who would have thought that the woman who once made the heavens and seas tremble would now end up in such a state? Though, in his final moments, he did recall the warmth of family and experienced the purest form of love this world could offer. It was already too late. Because, not far away, Zhang Yi would show no mercy. With a loud bang, a bullet named Justice tore through the air and headed straight for Yuan Konye. Even though he was in a deep coma, Yuan Konye was, after all, an epsilon-level powerhouse. So, when faced with danger, his body instinctively mounted a defense. But Zhang Yi remained cautious in response. He understood one principle: an injured beast is the most dangerous, especially one at the brink of death. Thus, Zhang Yi kept shooting continuously from a distance, showcasing the essence of a seasoned coward to the fullest. The idea of approaching Yuan Konye was out of the question. Even in this weakened state, Yuan Konye still took Zhang Yi an entire day and night to finish off. And so, with the last drop of his supernatural power drained, the once top-tier powerhouse was finally exhausted to the point of collapse. The bullet pierced through his body. Although this scene appeared somewhat cruel, when dealing with such a terrifying opponent, Zhang Yi had no choice but to do so. After all, Zhang Yi's motto was, "The final leg of a journey is the hardest." The last thing he wanted was for any mishap to occur at this stage. He hadn't slept for days and nights, and if it weren't for the support of certain drugs, he'd have already fallen like Yuan Konye. With immense restraint, Zhang Yi reached out and placed his hand on Yuan Konye's head. In an instant, golden light erupted. An indescribable sensation surged through his hand and into his entire body. Immediately after, Zhang Yi's body radiated with a dazzling golden glow. If his previous powers were like a small stream, now they had converged into a raging river. When Zhang Yi opened his eyes again, his right eye emitted a brilliant golden light as well. The terrifying energy fluctuation illuminated the entire surrounding space. Then, starting from Zhang Yi, the energy swiftly turned pitch black and engulfed the entire area. It's hard to tell how much time had passed since then, but Zhang Yi had completely absorbed the remaining powers of Yuan Konye. He closed his eyes, carefully sensing the changes within his body. Suddenly, a black electric light gathered in his palm. It was initially only the size of a small flame, but as time passed, the light grew larger and larger. Within a few breaths, it solidified into a pitch-black spear in Zhang Yi's hand. However, the moment the spear took form, Zhang Yi felt as though he couldn't control this terrifying energy. He quickly threw the spear out. With a sharp sound, the black spear pierced through the void, directly penetrating into the mountain ahead. In the next second, a massive surge of energy erupted from inside the mountain, followed by a rapidly expanding black sphere visible to the naked eye. When the energy dissipated, a perfectly circular hole appeared in the mountain. Just as Zhang Yi stood there in shock, the analysis of this new ability suddenly surfaced in his mind. It was the power of the void. Zhang Yi looked at his right hand and murmured, "If this skill is used in combination with the double gate, is there anyone in this world that I cannot kill?" But soon, Zhang Yi calmed himself down. He understood that one should not be overly arrogant, or else complacency would lead to his downfall, just like what happened to Yuan Konye. Moreover, when he thought back to the terrifying burst of power from the 5th unit leader before his death, and remembered Yuan Konye's mastery over hundreds of supernatural abilities, Zhang Yi realized that he still needed to remain cautious. Besides, the 5th unit leader once mentioned that there are other epsilon-level powerhouses in this world. Therefore, he must remain vigilant at all times. Still, cautious as he might be, Zhang Yi's eyes were brimming with confidence. After all, his power had reached a new height, and even if he couldn't win against a formidable opponent, it would be very difficult for them to capture him. Afterward, Zhang Yi called Uncle Yu and informed him of Yuan Konye's death. Upon hearing the news, Uncle Yu was stunned for a good 2 seconds. Then, he let out a long sigh of relief. "Thank goodness, we're finally safe." Overcome with excitement, he even forgot to ask how Zhang Yi was doing. But Zhang Yi didn't mind these minor details. He only wanted to know what the other factions in Tianhai City were up to, and what the investigation team was doing. After all, his battle with Yuan Konye had lasted for over 10 days. Uncle Yu then told him that Wei Dane had been killed, but his deputy, Chen Jingguan, was still alive. The investigation team had gone to the Qingpu base to heal Invincible. They were all waiting at the shelter for Zhang Yi's return. After hearing this, Zhang Yi drove back to the shelter. The familiar scenery evoked a deep sense of nostalgia, for his mental strength had nearly reached its breaking point. When the ladies at home heard that Zhang Yi was coming back, each of them eagerly gathered at the entrance, waiting anxiously. Their faces were filled with joy and anticipation. The moment Zhang Yi pushed open the door and walked in, he felt that everything he had endured was worthwhile, because he could see that these people genuinely cared for him. Hua was the first to rush toward Zhang Yi, his expression seemingly saying how worried he had been. The others called out Zhang Yi's name in unison. At that moment, everyone finally let out a sigh of relief. Zhou Kr and Yang Sha were so thrilled that they wanted to give him a hug. But Zhang Yi waved his hand, indicating that if he didn't sleep right away, he might just drop dead from exhaustion. "So, let's talk after I wake up," he said. And just like that, Zhang Yi walked past everyone and returned to his room. As he lay down on his bed, he realized that sleeping was truly an amazing feeling. Thus, the crisis in Tianhai City was completely resolved, and Zhang Yi quickly drifted into a deep sleep. It was just that this time, he slept a bit longer, only 2.5 years. After Zhang Yi woke up, he was feeling sore all over, with a stiff back and cramping legs. But at the same time, he was filled with excitement. Right now, he really wanted to know what the standard was for an epsilon-level powerhouse. But moments later, he dismissed the thought, thinking, "Who cares? With my current abilities, as long as I don't go looking for trouble, I shouldn't be in any real danger." Then, Zhang Yi opened the door and stepped out. The first person he saw was Hua, and his gaze seemed to carry complex emotions, as if he was afraid Zhang Yi wouldn't wake up again. But this was not surprising, because everyone was worried about Zhang Yi's condition. The most concerned were Zhou Kr and Yang Sha. As Zhang Yi's women, it was natural for them to be more troubled than the others. Next, Zhang Yi walked into the living room. His appearance clearly puzzled the others. It was young Xinqin who first called out, "Brother Zhang Yi." Then, Zhou Kr reacted. She rushed forward and said, "Zhang Yi, you're finally awake. You slept for 2 days and 2 nights straight. You scared us to death. How are you feeling now? Is there anything uncomfortable? Let me give you a full checkup." Zhang Yi simply smiled and replied, "I only drained some of my mental energy during the battle and wasn't injured. So, don't worry. After resting for 2 days, I'm perfectly fine." At this moment, Liang Yu asked the question that was on everyone's mind. "Did you kill Yuan Konye?" Zhang Yi gently shook his head and said, "Strictly speaking, it wasn't me who killed him. He exhausted his own spirit and stamina and died on his own." Everyone breathed a sigh of relief after hearing this. As the realization sank in, they couldn't help but marvel. A being nearly godlike in power actually died because of his own abilities. It was truly an unexpected outcome. At this point, Liang Yu looked at Zhang Yi with an eager expression and asked, "The essence of Yuan Konye, you must have absorbed it, right?" Hearing this, everyone turned their gaze toward Zhang Yi. Zhang Yi slightly nodded, confirming the speculation. He then made a small gesture to the group, saying, "I did get stronger, but only a little bit." The shelter was soon filled with cheers and laughter, because in their hearts, the stronger Zhang Yi became, the safer they all would be. However, a concern lingered in Zhang Yi's mind, the investigation team sent from Jiangnan district. After all, the death of the 5th unit leader was, to some extent, connected to him. Once they report this to the higher-ups in Tianhai City, it would not bode well for Zhang Yi. If they were to find out that Zhang Yi killed Yuan Kongye, things would only get worse. Even a child could figure out that Yuan Kongye's essence must have been absorbed by Zhang Yi. Would the Jiangnan district authorities allow a potential threat to exist right under their nose? So, Zhang Yi could only envision two outcomes. Either he would be recruited by Jiangnan district to be used exclusively for their purposes, like the 5th unit leader, or he would be eliminated as a ticking time bomb. Zhang Yi didn't want to gamble on these two possibilities. His way of handling things has always been to keep everything within his control. After thinking it over, he decided to negotiate directly with Baili Chongqing. Zhang Yi's goal was to use Baili's influence to resolve his own crisis.